That night, I invited a few friends over to my house for a sleepover. We had planned it for days, looking forward to staying up late, eating pizza, and just having a good time. As soon as they arrived, we set up the living room, spreading mattresses across the floor and grabbing every blanket and pillow we could find. It felt like the perfect setup for an unforgettable night. We started by playing video games, challenging each other, and laughing so hard that my stomach hurt. By midnight, the pizza arrived, and we devoured it, barely pausing between bites as we kept our game going. The hours seemed to fly by. None of us even realized how late it was. Eventually, as the clock crept toward 2 a.m., the excitement began to wear off, and we all started to feel the weight of exhaustion. One by one, we began to settle down. Some of us stretched out on the mattresses on the floor, while others claimed spots on the sofas. The chatter faded as everyone drifted into sleep, leaving the house wrapped in silence. I remember lying there, thinking about how fun the night had been, feeling that warm, relaxed drowsiness that only comes after hours of laughter and good company. Little did I know that this night was about to take a dark, unforgettable turn. I woke up in the middle of the night with my mouth feeling dry as sandpaper. My mind was still foggy with sleep, but the thirst was enough to push me out of the warmth of my blankets. Carefully, I sat up, trying not to disturb anyone. The house was blanketed in silence, with only the faint glow of a street lamp filtering through the windows, casting strange shadows across the walls. Not wanting to wake my friends, I tiptoed through the darkened room, making my way toward the kitchen. The whole house felt still, as if it were holding its breath. My footsteps sounded louder than usual on the floor, echoing through the empty spaces. A strange chill crept up my spine, but I brushed it off, blaming the eerie silence and my half-awake state. As I reached the hallway leading to the kitchen, the darkness seemed to deepen. I blinked, adjusting to the lack of light, my eyes straining to see through the shadows. The usual comfort of my own home felt oddly distant, like I was walking through a stranger's house. I shook my head, trying to snap myself out of it. It was just the middle of the night, I told myself, nothing more. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the strange feeling creeping over me, and continued my quiet walk toward the kitchen, unaware of the terror that was waiting just a few steps ahead. As I reached the edge of the kitchen, I froze, my entire body locking in place as a wave of terror crashed over me. Just a few feet ahead, in the darkness of the hallway, stood a figure, no, a creature. It was towering, impossibly tall and impossibly thin, with skin that seemed to drink in every bit of light, making it appear like a shadow brought to life. But the worst part was its eyes, two large, burning red orbs that gleamed in the darkness, piercing right through me. The creature's head was tilted down, as if to avoid brushing against the ceiling, its lanky, unnatural form hunched in a way that seemed almost deliberate, like it was trying to fit into a space it didn't belong. Those glowing red eyes locked onto mine, and a chill colder than anything I had ever felt ran through my veins. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was completely paralyzed by the sight before me, unable to tear my gaze away. My mind raced, struggling to process what I was seeing, but there was no logic to cling to, no way to rationalize this nightmare standing in my own home. The sheer terror overwhelmed me, and I felt a warm, humiliating trickle down my leg. I had lost control, so consumed by fear that I hadn't even noticed. My legs shook and my heart pounded so violently that it drowned out everything else. I don't know how long I stood there, locked in that horrifying, silent stare down with the creature. But then something in me snapped, and the primal urge to survive took over. Without thinking, I turned and bolted back toward the living room, sheer panic taking over every movement. I was screaming before I even realized it, my voice tearing through the silence and waking up my friends. I stumbled into the room, breathless, my hands shaking uncontrollably as I tried to form the words to explain what I'd just seen. My friends sat up, rubbing their eyes, still drowsy and confused, trying to process my terrified rambling. There's something in the hallway," I gasped, struggling to catch my breath as I pointed back toward the corridor, its tall and its eyes. Red eyes. My words felt weak compared to the horror I'd just experienced, but they were all I could manage. My friends looked at each other, concern flickering on their faces, but they were still clearly doubtful, half awake and half convinced I was imagining things. Reluctantly, they got up, one of them grabbing his phone to use as a flashlight. Together, they shuffled toward the hallway, flipping on the lights as they went. The warm, steady glow filled the corridor, revealing nothing but the usual shadows cast by the furniture and walls. No creature, no red eyes, nothing. I stood back, watching from the edge of the room, my heart still racing, desperately trying to make sense of what I had just witnessed. One of my friends turned back to me, raising an eyebrow. "Are you sure you didn't just have a nightmare?" he asked, his tone half skeptical, half concerned, but I knew it wasn't a dream. The memory of those eyes, the chilling presence of that creature, was burned into my mind. Yet, with no trace left behind, I could see the doubt starting to settle over everyone's expressions, even my own. After that night, I couldn't escape the image of that creature. No matter how hard I tried to push it away, the memory of those glowing red eyes haunted me every time I closed my eyes. It felt like the creature was still watching me, lurking just out of sight, ready to return. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and the terror it caused wouldn't let go. The nightmares came almost every night, vivid and relentless, making it impossible to get any real rest. The fear began to take over my life. I started avoiding dark places, even the hallways in my own home. I couldn't be alone in the dark anymore, and I found myself looking over my shoulder constantly, expecting to see those red eyes again. My friends tried to reassure me, telling me I had just imagined it, but the fear was too real for me to believe that. I knew what I saw, but the doubt crept in. Was it a hallucination, a nightmare I hadn't woken from? Eventually, I had to admit that the trauma was too much to handle on my own. I sought help from a psychiatrist, hoping to make sense of the chaos in my mind. We talked about the nightmares, the fear, and the overwhelming feeling that something was wrong. The psychiatrist suggested it was a result of stress and anxiety, but no matter how much therapy I went through, the fear remained. The creature, the red eyes, the feeling of being watched, it never stopped tormenting me. Even with treatment, the question still lingers in my mind. Was it real, or did my mind create it out of fear and exhaustion? The uncertainty is worse than the terror itself. Every time I close my eyes, I wonder if I'll see those red eyes again, or if this is all just a part of my mind breaking down. I was at school with 3 of my closest friends, all of us working on preparations for the school play. We were laughing, joking around, and just enjoying the afternoon together when the topic of the attic came up. The attic was one of those places in the school that everyone knew about, but nobody dared to go to. It was small, cramped, and filled with old costumes and theater props from past productions. The kind of place that seemed to be locked away, forgotten by most. My friends started talking about how they'd always wanted to explore it, but the narrow, rusted iron ladder that led up to the attic was enough to deter anyone from going up there. It was dark, tight, and not at all inviting, but they seemed to find it intriguing. Without any real hesitation, they decided they were going to climb up there anyway. I, of course, was a bit more cautious, not sure if I should follow them or stay behind. But they were excited, laughing, and heading toward the ladder. They climbed up, one by one, disappearing into the darkness of the attic. I stayed below, watching them from the bottom of the stairs, not thinking much of it at first. They were just messing around, having fun like usual. But then something shifted. The air around me felt heavier, colder. It wasn't just the excitement from the attic, there was something else, something unsettling. I heard their voices echoing from above, their laughter fading into strange murmurs. It was as though they were calling me to join them. At first, I thought they were just joking, trying to get me to follow. But then the voices started sounding more insistent. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The temptation was there, pulling at me. I felt a strange curiosity mixed with a hint of fear. So I made up my mind and began walking toward the attic ladder. Little did I know my decision would lead to something far beyond what I ever expected. As I stood there, trying to convince myself that I was just hearing things, I suddenly heard it. A faint whisper from the direction of the attic. At first I thought it was one of my friends playing a prank, their voice muffled by the distance and the walls. But then the whispering grew louder, more distinct, and I could clearly hear my name being called. Come here, come up. It wasn't just a voice, it was as if something was beckoning me, urging me to go upstairs. I paused for a moment, trying to shake off the growing unease. My friends had to be messing with me. They were always trying to scare me with tricks like this, and the attic was the perfect place to do it. I stood there for a while, waiting for them to reveal themselves, to show themselves behind a corner, but there was no sign of anyone. The silence lingered, only to be broken by the voices again. This time they were louder, clearer, and echoed down the narrow hallway. It was as if the walls themselves were amplifying the call, each whisper more persistent than the last. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I could feel my heart racing in my chest. Something about the way those voices sounded so urgent, so distant yet so close, sent a chill down my spine. I didn't want to go up there. I didn't want to face whatever this was, but the voices grew stronger, more demanding. I tried to tell myself it was just a joke, that my friends were up to something, but my gut told me it wasn't. I hesitated for a moment, my feet frozen to the floor, but then my curiosity overpowered my fear. I didn't want to leave it unexplored. Not knowing what was causing this, with a deep breath, I reluctantly started walking toward the attic ladder. My hands were clammy, and my mind raced with questions. What was going on? Why was I feeling so drawn to this place? Despite the fear creeping up on me, I knew I had to see for myself. With a deep breath, I mustered the courage to climb the iron ladder. My hands gripped the coal rungs tightly as I slowly ascended, each step feeling heavier than the last. The air grew colder the higher I climbed, and an unsettling chill ran down my spine, making my skin prickle. As I neared the narrow opening to the attic, a sense of dread washed over me. My heart raced in my chest, and my mind screamed at me to turn back. But I couldn't. Something was pulling me forward. I finally reached the top, pushing myself through the tight opening and into the attic. The moment I stepped inside, I was engulfed in complete darkness. The faint light from the hallway seemed a world away, leaving me alone in the suffocating blackness. My eyes strained, but I couldn't see a thing. The attic was vast, but it felt so empty, like a void that swallowed all light and sound. I called out for my friends, my voice trembling as I yelled their names into the darkness. "Guys, this isn't funny anymore. Come on, stop it," I shouted, trying to mask the panic creeping into my voice. But there was no response, no laughter, no footsteps, just silence. My heart thudded in my chest as I stood there, listening to the oppressive quiet. It felt like I was being watched, like something unseen was observing my every move. As I waited for a reply that never came, a cold realization began to settle in. My friends had never been here. The voices that had called me were not theirs, and now that I was here, alone in the dark, it dawned on me something wasn't right. There was no sign of anyone. It was just me and the overwhelming silence. And the fear that started to creep up on me felt like it was clawing at my sanity. I climbed back down the ladder, my legs feeling weak and unsteady from the rush of fear coursing through me. As I stepped back into the hallway, I expected to hear the sound of my friends laughing or talking, but there was nothing. No footsteps, no voices, just an eerie silence that seemed to hang in the air. I walked quickly toward the theater, calling their names once more, but still there was no answer. When I entered the theater, my heart sank. The room was completely empty. No sign of my friends, no traces of their presence. The tables were undisturbed, the lights flickered faintly in the corners, but it was quiet. Too quiet. I looked at my watch. How could it be? Hours had passed, but it felt like only minutes since I'd last seen them. They must have left, but why hadn't anyone told me? I stood frozen in the center of the room, trying to piece together what had just happened. How could I have missed it? How could they have all disappeared without a trace? My mind raced with questions, each one more chilling than the last. I kept looking at the doors, half expecting them to burst open and my friends to walk in, laughing at their prank. But nothing came, only the oppressive silence. As the cold reality set in, a wave of isolation swept over me. I was completely alone. The weight of the fear that had been building up in the attic now turned into a gnawing panic. What kind of twisted game was this? And why had I been left behind? The walls of the theater felt like they were closing in on me, and with every passing second I felt more trapped, more vulnerable. Something was terribly wrong, and I didn't know how to escape it. I tried to make sense of what happened, to tell myself it was just a strange trick of the mind or some kind of bizarre prank. But the more I thought about it, the less rational it seemed. How could all my friends have disappeared without a trace? Where did they go? Why didn't anyone hear me calling for them? My mind kept racing in circles, trying to find an answer that made sense, but it never did. The voices, the ones I had heard in the corridor calling my name, still echoed in my mind. They weren't as loud as before, but they lingered like whispers trapped in the back of my consciousness, reminding me of the fear I felt. Even now, when I'm alone in a quiet room, I can almost hear them again, soft, insistent, always beckoning. The feeling of that darkness in the attic, the cold emptiness that swallowed my friends, still clings to me. No matter how much I try to move on, to convince myself that it was just a moment of panic or exhaustion, I can't forget what happened that day. Every time I walk through that school, I feel a shiver down my spine. I try to rationalize it, but deep down, I know that something unexplainable happened in that attic. The truth is, I don't want to believe it, but I can't deny it either. The mystery remains unsolved, and it's something I carry with me. That afternoon changed me in ways I can't describe. I don't know if it was the work of something supernatural or just my mind playing tricks on me, but the sense that something beyond this world was at play that day has never left me. I can't shake the feeling that I was meant to see something, to experience something, but I still don't know what. And perhaps that's what scares me the most.